In a quiet village nestled between hills and fog, there lived an old weaver named Margaret. Her hands, lined with time, knew every thread, every knot, every secret of the loom. She wove not just with wool, but with soul, and people said her blankets wore more than just the body. They softened grief. They calmed restless hearts. Margaret lived alone in a wooden cottage at the top of a hill, where the wind sang through the eaves and the stars felt near enough to touch. She had been a widow for many winters. Her only son, Nathan, had left years ago to seek fortune beyond the mountains. Each month she would walk down to the village square to sell her weavings. Folks liked her, respected her, but few knew the ache that laced her nights. Nathan never wrote, no letters, no word, only silence. One morning, while combing the fleece of her sheep, Margaret heard a faint knock at the door. A traveller stood there, young, pale, his clothes threadbare, his eyes heavy with things unsaid. He carried nothing but a small satchel, and a gaze that seemed too tired for his years. "I'm cold," he said. "I have no gold, no bread, only stories." Margaret studied him for a moment. Then, wordlessly, she stepped aside and gestured to the fire. "Stories feed us, too," she said. She gave him warm soup and stale bread, and in return he told her of forgotten forests, cities carved from stone, wars that broke nations, and miracles that stitched them back together. There was sorrow in his voice, but also the flicker of hope. When night came, Margaret offered him a blue woolen blanket. The young man curled up by the hearth and slept like a child who hadn't felt safe in years. By morning, he thanked her with a grateful smile and a quiet promise. "Someday, I'll come back." Weeks passed. That year, winter arrived early. The wind cut like knives, and snow blanketed the rooftops. One bitter afternoon, as the bare branches trembled outside, 3 men came knocking. Soldiers, cloaked in black, boots heavy with snow, blades at their sides. "We're hunting a fugitive," the others one said. "A traitor, a thief. Word is he passed through this village." Margaret didn't ask his name. She simply listened. Young, thin, pale face, sad eyes. The man added. Her heart clenched. "I haven't seen him," she lied. The soldiers stared for a long moment, then turned away, leaving deep prints in the snow. Margaret bolted the door, sat by the fire, and wept. Wept for the choice she had made, for the doubt twisting inside her, for the memory of a young man she had fed and listened to with gentleness. What if he was guilty, she wondered. What if he wasn't? But the choice had already been made. That night, sleep didn't come. Instead, she reached for the softest wool she owned, blue like the sky before snowfall, and began to weave. Every thread held a question, every knot a fear, every line a prayer. She wove for a stranger's soul, for redemption, for mercy. The next day she went outside and dug a shallow grave in the frozen earth behind her cottage. She buried the blanket he had used. "If they come looking for traces," she whispered, "they'll find nothing." Time passed. The soldiers never returned, nor did the young man. Margaret slipped back into her routine, spinning, weaving, selling. But something had changed. The wool no longer obeyed her hands. Her blankets came out uneven, lifeless. It was as if the thread in her heart had tangled. A year later, during the autumn market, a stranger appeared. A young woman with light eyes, a round belly, and a baby nestled against her chest. She approached Margaret's stall, looked over the fabrics, but chose nothing. Instead, she said softly, "He spoke of you. Said you gave him shelter, that you forgave him, that you believed. Margaret froze. Who? The woman gave a small, sad smile. My husband. His name was Liam. He died crossing the river, trying to come back. The name struck Margaret like a stone. He wanted to return the blanket, the woman continued. Said he couldn't carry it without first clearing his name. He hoped one day to tell you everything. She opened her bag and gently pulled out a piece of faded blue cloth, worn but whole. The same wool, the same weave. Margaret trembled. But she had buried that blanket, hadn't she? He made another, the woman said, as if reading her thoughts. Wove it himself, with what he learned from you. She placed the blanket on the table, picked up her child, and walked away. She asked for nothing, waited for no blessing. She simply left. That night, Margaret sat with the blanket in her lap. She ran her fingers over it slowly, like one touches a memory. And once again, she wept, not out of guilt, not even relief, but because she finally understood. She hadn't saved an innocent man, nor had she hidden a guilty one. She had chosen to love without knowing. She had offered warmth in the dark, and that warmth, at last, had found its way back to her hands. That night, the wool obeyed on